Hey, 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 today is National Lighthouse Day. Yes, National Lighthouse Day. And of course, in the 21st century, lighthouses don't really serve much of a purpose. They still do. They're not as critical to the survival of sailors and maritime cargo as they once were. But many people look at lighthouses these days as just objects of beauty. But just to point out, there is still a need for lighthouses. So today is National Lighthouse Day. I don't know how you personally feel about lighthouses, but I do know something, and that is the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer. I'm back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com. So today is my first day back from Gen Con as far as having a show. Of course, I got back Sunday night, and yesterday was kind of a little bit of a recuperation day. Plus, I was putting together some videos as well. So I did do a lot of different interviews. I actually did record a talk that Graham Davis did regarding Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay for Cubicle 7 Entertainment. That is up on the channel right now. It is getting a lot of traction so far in the first, well, no, I guess it's closer to about 12 hours that it's been up. So very, very interesting talk that Graham gave about, mainly focused on the Enemy Within campaign, the original Enemy Within campaign for first edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay as opposed to third edition. But a lot of good information, a lot of cool stories as well, too. And of course, I do have my interview with Julie Ahern from Greenbrier Games up today, too. Well, that went up late last night. Was it early this morning? I forget. Well, it's up. All I can tell you, it's up. So today is August 7th. It is Tuesday, and I'm very happy to be back and kicking it with the gang once again. Do want to point out I am going to be taking a first look. I'm going to be paging through Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory. This is the core book. It is still in the shrink, as you can see. It's from Ulisses North America. I've got a lot of Ulisses North America interviews coming up as well. So that's going to be very cool. I even talked to Ross Watson once again about some other aspects of Wrath and Glory, mainly about what's kind of on the horizon. So I'm going to crack that open. We are going to kick back and we are going to look through the core book in depth. Do want to mention this is a live stream, although I know a vast majority of you watch the show after the fact. But if you are watching live, chat is available through YouTube. It is not on screen. That's how I keep some of the stranger commenters at bay. But if you have a question or a comment, just want to say hi, if you want me to take a closer look at something while we're looking through Wrath and Glory, chime on in. I will acknowledge that and respond. Because there is a lot of book for us to go through today, I kind of shaved down the news a little bit. So I've got 4 news pieces. Let's jump into the news, and then I will actually talk a little bit about my experience at Gen Con. Yep, I always love it. My favorite convention every single year. But anyway, if you're a fan of Saban's Power Rangers, then you'll certainly be interested in my next news piece about Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. And I have a little bit of dope. Renegade Game Studios and Hasbro are excited to announce the team-up of the year. Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid is a cooperative board game by famed designer Jonathan Ying that challenges 2 to 5 players to save Angel Grove from Rita Repulsa's evil army of monsters in real time. All the classic characters you know and love come to life on the table thanks to Dan Mora on art and amazing oversized plastic miniatures. Show your support for this game by backing the Kickstarter, which is going to launch this month on the 14th. In Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, up to 5 players become Power Rangers. Go, go, Power Rangers! To battle the forces of darkness using martial arts, teamwork, and giant assault vehicles, known as Zords. Included in the core game experience are brutal enemies like Rita Repulsa, Pudgy Pig. Pudgy Pig doesn't necessarily sound very brutal. Madame Woe, and relentless swarms of putty patrollers, all for the Mighty Morphin team to tackle. There's also the Shattered Grid expansion. From a twisted reality where the Rangers have fallen, Lord Drakon has risen and formed a deadly army to cross dimensions and threaten all of reality via the Morphin Grid itself. The Shattered Grid expansion features new locations and challenging new foes directly from the pages of Boom Studios' award-winning comic series. Included in the set are the Ranger Slasher, Black Dragon, and of course the mastermind himself, Lord Drakon. But all is not lost. Brand new allies from across time and dimensions join in the battle, including the Power Rangers Hyperforce, straight from the hit series on Hyper RPG. Something I am not familiar with. In fact, I am not familiar with anything really having to do with Power Rangers. But Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid is for 2 to 5 players, ages 14 and up, and plays in around an hour. It will have an expected release of spring 2019 if the Kickstarter ends up funding. So, as I mentioned, I know really nothing about Power Rangers. Of course, I'm at San Diego Comic-Con, and they always have the various actors there signing autographs, the actors who portrayed the original Rangers and things like that. Power Rangers just came out when I was too old for it. So I have, just like there's shows that I watched, like Robotech, when I was a high schooler. And of course, plenty of people didn't watch Robotech because that was before their time. So this was just after my time. I will tell you one thing, and I don't mean to knock anybody involved in this, but between Renegade Game Studios, Hasbro, and Boom Studios together, is this something they really need to take to Kickstarter? I did talk to some different game manufacturers, some friends I have in the industry while I was at Gen Con, and you'd be surprised. Some of the bigger, more established companies, I'm not talking about companies out there that just have 1 or 2 titles out there. There are companies that have been around for a while that they have big selling games, are talking about how they're getting squeezed out of the hobby. They're really getting squeezed out of the hobby, and just the glut of games out there is really starting to kind of tighten the vice on them, I guess I would say. So, I mean, by all means, I like Renegade Game Studios. They've got cool stuff. I've got some review stuff coming up from them. I always like talking to Sarah Erickson. I did an interview with Danny. Gosh, off the top of my head, I can't remember her last name. This year at Gen Con, had a lot of fun. So I'm not knocking Renegade Game Studios or Hasbro or Boom. Just kind of surprised they're taking this to Kickstarter because they're not companies that really need Kickstarter. All right, moving right along. Of course, the second 2.0 playtest, I should say, for Pathfinder was a big deal at Gen Con this year. But there was an announcement that was made by Paizo that is going to be interesting for a lot of role players out there, because the Starfighter Beginner Box has been announced, and I've got a little bit of the dope on this release, which is scheduled for next spring. We have an important communications dispatch to issue here at Starfinder HQ. We're working on a Starfinder Beginner Box. Come spring 2019, you'll be able to get your hands on a box with all the components needed to quickly learn and play the popular Starfinder RPG. From dice to maps to pawns to separate books for GMs and players, this box is meant to provide a self-contained gaming experience for those with little to no experience with Starfinder, or with tabletop RPGs at all. Work on the beginner box is still churning apace back in our office in Redmond, even as a project design team is bustling around Indianapolis at Gen Con. In addition to our team's game design work, at this very moment, We have the best production crew members in the business dedicated to making this product as awesome as possible. The Starfinder Beginner Box includes a 96-page Hero's Handbook detailing character creation as well as introducing all the equipment, magic spells, weapons, and rules for playing, a 96-page Game Master's Guide that introduces the Starfinder setting, alien adversaries, and advice on running adventures, a set of 7 polyhedral dice, 80 full-color pawns, 6 blank character sheets, 6 aid cards for quick rules reference, a durable double-sided flip mat, and 6 pre-generated character sheets. As of right now, there is no word on an MSRP, but I will point out in the past, I want to say, I'm taking this off the top of my head, I want to say I thought the Pathfinder Beginner Box was actually really attractively priced. I thought it was like $39.99, something like that. So that is pretty nice. Now, I did open up by saying the Pathfinder 2.0 playtest is on. I do want to mention, if you didn't know this, you're probably living under a rock, but if you didn't know this, you can go to Paizo.com and secure a copy in PDF absolutely free. Now, I've personally secured myself a copy because I want to take a peek. Of course, I haven't had a chance to just yet. I did find it interesting at Gen Con that even on Sunday, there were still copies of the various versions of the 2.0 core book available. So there were the hardcovers, there were the soft covers. I don't know if they still had kind of the limited edition ones, but it did not sell out. So I guess Paizo probably printed up a ton so that because they figured there'd be a lot of demand. But I was surprised. There were actually some that were still available. So take a peek online. You might, if you want to get a physical copy. See, for me, it's a playtest book. So I don't mind having PDF. I mean, I don't mind having any book in PDF. Don't get me wrong. But I have to point out that it is a playtest book. So having a physical book may not necessarily be as important to you as when an actual release comes out. Needed that. Needed to wet the old whistle. Okay, so I'm kind of going heavy on RPG news today. But if you've been on the fence about giving Symborum, I think that's how it's pronounced. But if you have been thinking about giving Symborum, let's say that, Symborum. So let's say Symborum. That sounds good. A test drive, Bundle of Holding actually has a new offering to save you some serious dough. And here's the dope. Adventure, this Symborum bundle presents Symborum. Now see, it's going to just say it constantly, right? The tabletop role-playing game of dark fantasy from the Swedish game studio Järnringen. I'm sure that's wrong, how I pronounced it. Anyway, but it is co-published in English by Modifius. At least I can pronounce that. Inspired by the films Princess Mononoke, and I've seen it. Why couldn't I just pronounce that? See, and I even took a sip to make sure that my tongue was all hydrated and everything. Anyway, inspired by the films Princess Mononoke and Pan's Labyrinth and The Witcher computer game, Symborum conjures the forbidding primeval forest of Devakar, a rich setting of ancient ruins and barbarian clans, iron-packed elven wardens and blight beasts, princes and rogues, treasure and corruption, all beautifully illustrated in full color. This bargain price offer of English language PDF ebooks includes the complete rules, supplements, adventures, game aids, and artwork. Everything you need to explore the depths of Devakar. For just $14.95, you'll get all 5 titles in the starter collection, retail value $48, as DRM-free PDF books, including the full-color 264-page Symborum Core Rulebook, the Advanced Player's Guide, the Map Set, the Abilities and Powers reference cards, and Adventure Pack 1 with 2 introductory scenarios. And if you pay more than the threshold price of $24.79, you'll level up and also get the entire bonus collection with 5 more titles worth an additional $51, including the Mark of the Beast and Tomb of Dying Dreams, 2 landscapes, scenarios that complete the adventure begun in the core rulebook. This will hold Wrath of the Warden, the launch of a new 7-part campaign, the Symborum Game Master screen, and the glorious art book, The Art of Symborum. 10% of your payments after payment gateway fees will be donated to this offer's designated charity, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. So you can score these big savings for another 20 days. Always dig the bundle of holding stuff. And there are times, and I have noticed lately, we have gotten to see more Modifius Entertainment releases, which is very cool, because Modifius does really, really nice books. Very, very impressive books. So very cool to see another of the Modifius Entertainment English language books, English language series that are out there right now. And finally, there's a Kickstarter that's going on right now for a Monster Tome, which is aimed at players of 5e, which is specifically aimed towards gamers who face challenges of sensory impairments and or learning disabilities. And I've got the dope from Power Up Gamers, or I should say Power Up Gamer. Power Up Gamer, Pug, is proud to announce the launching of its second Kickstarter for the next volume of its series of monster manuals, Legat's Tome of Amazing Creatures series. Continuing from Volume 1, new product will include 26 new flavorful characters, or creatures I should say, for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, this time focusing on the fantastical, non-hostile denizens of Legat's prime material plane. The book will also carry the company ethos of supplying gamers with ways of making their games more accessible to a wider variety of people, especially those with sensory impairments and learning disabilities. This is done by suggesting language and methods that evoke the senses, as well as outright descriptions of the beasts and their habitats. Legat's Tome of Amazing Creatures, Volume 2, is Power Up Gamer's next supplement containing homebrew and reskin monsters for D&D 5e. Much like the first volume, we plan on releasing 26 homebrewed and reskin monsters with rich lore, culture, and history sections, several tables including a D100 magic item roll table, and a section containing 12 locations with sights, sounds, and sensations specifically designed to cater to folks with disabilities. Each location will also have a trap, a puzzle, and a riddle, along with monsters from the series that might be found there. The supplement will have a full color cover with black ink sketches of the monsters inside. Right now, the project is about a third of its way to a very, very accessible $1,500 funding goal, with an expected delivery of December of this year. So you can score the second volume in PDF for a $10 pledge. Both volumes, one is already out. In fact, I'm sharing images from the first volume with you, and I'll say something more about that in just a moment. You can get volumes 1 and 2 in PDF for a $20 pledge, or the physical edition of the second volume if the particular stretch goal is reached, and you'll be able to get that for $35. So I have to say that as someone who does not, deal with the physical challenges that other gamers may, or, various different challenges that they face, and being a game master for decades now, I take it for granted, right? That everybody around the table, regardless, and I have sat in at conventions that with folks in wheelchairs and so forth, but I've always kind of taken it for granted that everybody around the table is processing the information in fairly the same manner as I would, right? So I think this is very, very cool how Power Up Gamer has, and I believe the gentleman's name is Jaron, who is behind this, and he does he does have some sort of physical disabilities of some sort. I do not know for sure. I mean, I have seen some video of him talking about the project. So what a great way to kind of change the way that you run games to make our hobby more accessible to more people. I think that's very, very cool. So I did want to share this. I am sharing Drive-Thru RPG's information, and that is because Power Up Gamer doesn't have a website. They've got Twitter, but of course that's a huge, long web address. And they also have Facebook, and once again, that's a really long web address, so it wouldn't actually fit. So I'm showing Drive-Thru RPG, and I'm also showing Power Up Gamers. So if you go to Kickstarter, search for Power Up Gamer. If you go to Drive-Thru RPG, you can search for Power Up Gamer, or you can also, because you can get the first volume. It's out. It's out in PDF. I want to say it's 56 pages. And I just got a copy of it myself to take a quick peek at. So anyway, I like that. I think that's very cool. So it's pretty small goal there. Let's try to help Jaron bring the second volume to the public. All right, so that's it for the news today. So of course, most of last week I was in Indianapolis for Gen Con. I left here Wednesday morning because I thought, hey, you know what? I'll hang out for Trade Day. Because I had an invite. Well, all press had, an open invite to take part in Trade Day. And I hadn't taken part in Trade Day in about, 5 years. And it was sort of like, not a whole lot going on when I first went down there. Well, this year there was much, much more going on. And actually, during Trade Day, I got to demo the Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions trading card game from Play Fusion, which is actually pretty cool. And Jason Bremer, who I've done an interview with, you'll see that video soon, provided me with the starter decks for each of the 4 factions. So, and I actually was playing it Sunday night when I got back from Gen Con with Cameron, with my nephew Cameron. So anyway, so I'm there covering Trade Day, and then I find out for sure that Elliot Miller's not coming. And we were sharing a room, and because we had handled the reservations for San Diego Comic-Con, Elliot was handling the reservations for Gen Con, and when he decided he wasn't going, there went that reservation. So I ended up having to stay in Murder Motel the last minute, so that was pretty bizarre. But and then my brother came down. He can only come down Thursday and Friday because he works for Southwest, so he flies on the weekends. So he did shoot some video for me on Thursday and Friday. My nephew Cameron came down. He got to experience Gen Con for Thursday and Friday. It was his first Gen Con. He had a really good time. He really enjoyed it. But I had a blast. I had a lot of fun. It was a lot more stressful than Gen Cons normally are for me because Elliot Miller's there. And then, Saturday and Sunday, we help each other shoot video for each other's outlets. And plus it was kind of a bummer. It wasn't really Gen Con without Elliot there. But I still had a blast. I had a really, really good time. Talked to a lot of my friends in the industry. Got plenty of interviews. The interviews are gonna be kind of slow in coming, simply because I'm doing the daily show. I gotta get that up every day, and the news and that. So I don't know. During the week, we might see maybe one interview pop up from the show, and then I'm gonna try to get as many done over the weekend as I possibly can. So, unfortunately, I think probably this week and next week, there's going to be Gen Con interviews all over the place. So, it's not going to be, oh, wow, they're all out there in 3 days. Can't do it. I can't crank those videos out so quickly and do all the graphics and everything else. So anyway, I had a really good time. Had a really, really good time. So anyway, let's move right on into taking a look at Wrath and Glory, because I know that's why people are tuning in. So as I mentioned, I've got a lot of interviews coming up for Wrath and Glory. I mean, they're already shot. I just have to do the graphics and things like that, do maybe a little bit of editing. But Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory is from Ulisses North America. It came out at Gen Con. Yes, that's right. The core book came out at Gen Con, and they were selling a lot of them. Now, as far as I understand, the core book PDF should be arriving on or about August 17th. Don't quote me on that. I think that's when it's coming out. So just so you know, as far as the actual physical book hitting retail stores, I understand there's a soft target date of sometime in October, although I have also heard through the grapevine it could be as early as September 28th, but October is pretty solid. The physical hardcover carries an MSRP of $59.99. I do not know if you can still order it from Ulysses in any way, shape, or form. I don't know if it's completely sold out or not, but it is not going to be in retail just yet. It's gonna be a couple of months, folks, till it hits retail. So I'm going to move on over to the other camera here. And I had Archmage from Starling Games doing some duty here as holding the book up. As you can see, the book is still in shrink. I have not opened this puppy up. For some reason, I want to say this is about 352 pages. I am not positive. Don't have the credits for everybody, so we're going to actually make sure to give credit to the folks. We're going to go to the credit page as well. Anyway, role-playing in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. This accursed age needs heroes more than ever before. Shattered by the Great Rift, the galaxy is on the brink of oblivion and madness. There are those who vote... Gosh, Jeff, come on. It's only English, dude. There are those who fight for a shred of hope, a glimmering promise that this millennium may yet endure. What will you fight for? What will you sacrifice? Enter a galaxy full of danger and mystery, plagued by the star-spanning schemes of the dark gods. You will defend the last bastions of civilization against a rising tide of corruption. In fact, I believe the first adventure book is actually called Rising Tide. You will explore ancient ruins of races long vanished. You will uncover lost secrets and devious schemes. This is a game of danger and mystery. This is a game of action and adventure. This is a game about the struggle to hold back the doomsday clock from striking midnight for an entire galaxy. This is your story of wrath and glory. Alrighty. So, in the interview I did with Ross Watson at Gen Con, which it'll be up in a few days. At one point I was talking and I said, folks, I gotta say, I've got my copy of Wrath and Glory core rules, and the shrink wrap is excellent. So, because it's a trick, I hadn't cracked it open. So, this is Ulisses North America. And I need to get a little more Diet Pepsi going here. I'm still kind of dragging a little bit from Gen Con. Part of it was because unlike most conventions, when I'm at a pretty decent hotel, or at worst case scenario motel, I get some sleep. Wasn't getting a whole lot of sleep at Murder Motel, so anyway. So right off the bat, Wrath and Glory is produced over in Europe, just like all Ulysses releases are. So we know that the quality of the book is going to be top-notch. So I can see right off the bat, we're going to have our bookmarks. Ulysses loves to give us bookmarks. So there we go. Let's make sure, let's bring this down a little bit so I'm not cutting stuff off. So, and was I right? Is it 352 pages? It is. Oh my gosh, no, it's way more than that. It's 450 some. So, we are going to page through this. I am not going to, you know, focus too much. Just want to give you folks a first look at what we've got. Okay, so the credits here, lead designer is Russ Watson. Knew that. Got Owen Barnes, Aaron Dembski-Bowden, John Dunn, Andrea Gausman, Jordan Goldfarb, Daryl Hayhurst, and I talked to Daryl. I interviewed Daryl as well at Gen Con. W. Jason Peck, Wendolyn A. Reichel, who I interviewed at Origins. Stephen Rhodes and William Thresher are the designers. And then we've got the cover art by Diego Gilbert Lawrence and all the interior artists. A lot of playtester credits as well. So, okay. Got our table of contents. Blood of the Covenant. Looks like this is some, looks like we've got a bit of just a flavor story here. It's usually how a lot of these open up. So we got a forward, talking about the 41st millennium. Of course, this is set in the Warhammer 40K 8th edition universe, where there's a lot of changes going on. I'll be the first to point out that I am not overly knowledgeable about 8th edition Warhammer 40K, but I do understand that there's been this this great rift, this rending, I should say, of the galaxy, and a lot of foes, a lot of races who would be natural enemies are all being thrown together because the big bads, I believe, are the chaos gods. I believe they're the dark gods. So figure, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Could I adjust my light a little bit? I'm not really seeing a whole lot of glare. Maybe like this, because the lighting is all set up for Bashner Istvan. Now, see, now I'm not seeing a big reflection on everything on the video on my end. I'm not seeing tons of. Let's take a look. Take a quick peek. No, I'm not seeing a ton of glare. So yeah, that's kind of strange. I am not sure why that would be the case. So doing the best I can here. Yep. Okay. So of course we've got the obligatory what is role-playing game, what you're going to need to have. Talking about players, player characters. Talking about the dice. Wrath and Glory utilizes 6-sided dice, paper and pencil. So here we have the Dark Imperium. So my understanding is that the core book pretty much kicks off with a lot of background information. Yep, yeah, I can only do what I can do with the lighting. The lighting I can't adjust. It's all specifically set up here. Talking about the Adeptus Mechanicus, Worlds of the Imperium, Vaults of Mars, Holy Terra, Gods of Chaos. So now talking about the various different races. Servants of the Dark Gods, the Eldari, which used to be the Eldar. Then you got the Orcs, Tyranids, talking about the Horus Heresy, Necrons. Now we talk about the Great Rifts, and talking. They're showing us kind of a galaxy map here. So I had pointed out previously how I thought it was pretty cool how Games Workshop, who I am sometimes kind of rough on, that the new edition, 8th edition for Warhammer 40K, as far as the miniatures game, really did change things up. it wasn't just, hey, we're doing our usual, hey, we're going to change some rules around, we're going to change some of these army lists, so that we're going to make you go buy new rule books, new codexes. Granted, there was still that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you that they didn't do that at all, but at least they made something a bit different. They advanced the narrative. And I kind of understand, it's kind of been discussed with me a little bit about how the way the role-playing game is set up is, I guess, like I said, I'm not all that well versed in 8th edition Warhammer 40K, but that there's like a 100-year period, or they kind of do like jumps in the timeline, and this gives players an opportunity, especially game masters, to kind of dip their toes in and create the, fill in those blanks themselves to really make the Wrath and Glory universe their own. That it's their own sandbox to play in. Now, granted, of course, there's plenty of published materials that are on the horizon. The Rising Tide game adventure booklet is one, or I shouldn't say adventure booklet. It's an adventure book that's coming in Wave 1. They've already got Wave 2 planned out. When I talked to Ross Watson, Ross couldn't tell me a whole lot. He shared a few things about it, but couldn't really go into a whole lot of detail about what's in Wave 2. But this is going to be a big release. This is probably going to end up being the big RPG for Ulisses North America here in North America. They also do Torg Eternity, which I really like. I've got info about the Living Land Kickstarter from an interview at Gen Con as well. They got Fading Suns, which is probably going to come to Kickstarter. It's either going to be Kickstarted or one of those like pre-order bundle kind of things. But this is the game that I really think is going to be a big deal for Ulisses North America and help really. They've already got the Dark Eye, which has established them here. But I think this is what really is going to kind of vault them to the fore. So there's glossary, talking about keywords. Keywords are very big in the 8th edition of the miniatures rules. So we're looking at a lot of keywords for the game mechanics as well. Talking about making tests, default difficulties. So as I mentioned before, this uses standard 6-sided dice. We've got corruption tests. So now we're moving into all of the various different mechanics. Then we've got wrath points, which I believe the wrath points are similar along the lines to bennies and fate points and the various different kind of tokens that a lot of games utilize now for the players to kind of, change the story, kind of change the direction of the story, or re-roll dice, or change failure into success, things like that. So spending wrath, gaining wrath, glory. Maybe it's glory. I know there's one of the two is what you get to spend on that. Oh boy. And then there's ruin. I don't know if I want to gain ruin. High Lords of Terra and Rogue Traders failing forward. Okay, there we go. Now we go into character creation. And the preview, the free RPG day, Blessings Unheralded, included 6 pre-gens that were pretty cool. One thing as far as the characters as well that is pretty sweet is because in 8th edition, you've got these various different factions who are all thrown together. You can have a group of players who wouldn't... Oh, there we go. Ruin is for the GM. Thanks. You can have a group of players that you wouldn't necessarily have seen together as a play group in previous editions of Warhammer 40K role-playing games. Say, for an example, from Fantasy Flight Games. So with this new Great Rift and everybody kind of being thrown together looking to survive, it's going to give you a lot more options as far as your characters. Now, that doesn't mean they're all in this book. But I do believe that coming in one of the future waves will be rules as far as playing Eldari. So I'm sure there's going to be rules for playing orcs. So talking about the different purchasing skills, purchasing talents, war gear. You'll have your archetypes. So we've got things like death cult assassins, Inquisitors, rogue traders, hive gangers, cultists, chaos space marines. Now see, there are Eldari in here. Corsairs, rangers, and warlocks. I'll have to see if there's more detail in here. So then they show by tier. I'm going to take a guess that like by tier here, that sort of means these are more starting characters. Because I believe there's also an option that if you want to have more experienced characters in your game from the beginning, that you can. So I believe tier 1 are sort of like, you know, your level 1 characters, and tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 are going to be what would normally be considered higher level, more experienced characters. So as you can see, that as we're flipping through here, now there's the various different talents. Now we're talking about attributes. As you can see, there's artwork, but there isn't tons and tons of artwork. This isn't a book where you're going to feel like, wow, I'm getting cheated out of gaming material, because even though the artwork's cool, it's just too much of it. And I know a lot of people out there are very well versed with a lot of different role-playing game systems, and there are times where you're like really pumped for a book to come out, and you're like, man, because I love great artwork, don't get me wrong, because I find great artwork to inspire me as a game master. But sometimes you'll have these various different products come out, and it's just way too much art and way too much fluff, and you're not really getting much bang for your buck as far as gaming material. But we are seeing lots and lots of tables and info. So you can select your species. So it shows, says the Wrath and Glory core rulebook presents 5 species from which players can select through the campaign's framework, and tier may constrain this further. There you go, desperate allies. As I was talking about, everybody's thrown together. The greater good, human roles. Then the Eldar, the Eldari as they're called now. The orcs. Funny enough, I used to play a lot of Epic with the little 6mm, and I always had, my army was Eldar. Of course, I should say I had all the different armies because I was the guy who had to buy them and paint them. But I played Eldar all the time. So we've got the orcs here. Got the Space Marine chapters. Just a handful of them. Talking about Space Marine implants. See, as I mentioned, pretty cool artwork. Pretty sweet art. I have to say, there's less artwork in this than I had noticed, say, like in the core book for the Dark Eye. But I'm not complaining because I want gaming material. All right, so you can create custom archetypes. There you go. Nestorum Priest, Death Cult Assassin, Crusader, Sister of Battle, Commissar, Imperial Guardsman, Agents of the Imperium, Rogue Trader Dynasties. I mean, this is jam-packed. Look, now we're only at page 123. So we got the Inquisitor, Rogue Trader there, Sanctioned Psyker. So this is just giving you all the information about all the various archetypes that are available to you. Scum! There you go. There's my character right there. Scum. It says Scum and Variety. For a second, I thought for sure I was going to say Scum and Villainy. It's got the Ganger, Scavy Desperado. I got Renegades. Chaos Space Marines. That would be a bit interesting. Got the Eldar here. The Orcs. Alright, and then there's some options as far as getting quick start attributes, purchasing skills. I don't believe there's tons of skills in this. I believe, I think something like maybe 20 or 30 skills. Kind of taking that from looking through the not the quick start, the free RPG day. Imperial Creed. Oh, looks like there are more than those. A lot more skills. Or maybe these are talents. Maybe I just pop past and looking at talents right now. Could be. That might have been talents. Then we got the war gear. Special abilities. A lot of various charts as far as your background, your accomplishments. Talk about character advancement here. Talking about the keywords, as I mentioned before. The keywords are a big deal in the miniatures game, so that's carried over into the role-playing game. And we go into combat, which, of course, that is something that you are going to probably have a lot of. Not to say that this is just a combat game by any stretch of the imagination. There's going to be a lot of investigation, things like that. Exploration. Jumping, running, sprinting, swimming. Tactical advantage. Talking about terrain. Using miniatures. Combat options. Called shots. Critical hits. So this is probably going to be a little crunchier as far as the combat rules as compared to, say, Torg Eternity or the Dark Eye. Talking about combat effects. The memorable injury table. Oh, you won't be forgetting that injury. Void ship combat. Talking about some vehicles here. NPC void ships and actions. And here we have adventuring. I'm going to take a guess this might start getting into kind of game master materials here. About passage of time and movement. Environmental hazards, warp travel. Yeah, seems to be kind of starting to veer into game master information here. Threatening tasks. Investigations. Frauds. An example of an extended investigation. Influence, rarity, and wealth. Campaign cards. Resting. And now we got war gear, so now we're going to get into a bunch of the weapons and equipment. Talking about ranged weapons here. Cool, we're going to actually see quite a few of them as well. Eldar weapons. We've got melee weapons. The chain sword, the famous chain sword. Force rod, force sword. Power swords. The chopper. Power claw. So we've got a lot of gear here. And then we move into armor. about force shields, tools and equipment. Cybernetics. Implants. We get into some vehicles. And void ships. Trinkets and charms. Psychic powers. Strangely enough, now granted we've got probably about 100 pages to go through this. Not a lot of stuff that's like specifically geared towards the GM, because I thought we were moving into that kind of information, but then it looks like just different sections, which, you know, for players and game masters. And I'll be very honest, I can't recall if there's like a specific game master's book for Wrath and Glory. I don't think there is one. But I'm not positive. It's possible. It's possible that might be in Wave 2 that we didn't really talk a whole lot about. Talking about corruption tests. Phobias, addictions, mutations. All right, here's the Game Master section. Not a whole heck of a lot. Role of the Game Master. Bringing the Dark Imperium to life. Let the galaxy burn. Campaigns and frameworks. Because based on, from what I believe, based on the framework that the Game Master is going to utilize, that's going to determine what sort of characters you can have. So here we got frameworks. Here we go, the orcs. Innocence proves nothing. Into the Dark Frontier. So talking about campaigns, campaign length, adventures. Balancing encounters. I am curious because I know on Drive-Thru RPG there are various sort of I don't want to say home brewed. I mean, it's more than just a home brewed. They're actually releases kind of like DM's Guild would have for D&D. That they've got for Torg Eternity. I believe they have it for Dark Eye as well, where it's adventures created by gamers that are available for purchase. I wonder if that's going to start happening with Wrath and Glory, if that option will be out there. Then we got a bestiary. Talking about threats and scaling the threats. Talking about different NPCs. Mutants, Scroungers, Space Marines, Chaos Cultists. So, Chaos Spawn Mutations. Lots of different horrors, Plague-ridden. A lot of goodness in here. I am definitely going to be kicking back with this and going through this this book in depth, because I am very, very interested in this. Very interested to see what Ulisses North America has put together. So, book looks really good. Gotta admit, the page stock seems a little bit different. I don't want to say it's like really flimsy, but it seems a little bit different than the Torg books or the Dark Eye books, but maybe that's just my imagination. It's got some more different monsters here, or I should say different adversaries. So then we are going to have the character sheets. So we've got this page here as well as this page here. And then we've got the index. So as far as your character sheet, you've got two sides. Tool sides, and of course you'll be able to download the character sheet. You don't have to sit there and try to scan it or anything out of the book. So there's quite a bit going on, but not as much as, say, like the Dark Eye, where the Dark Eye, you got 4 pages of a character sheet, and then if you use magic, there's a 5th page as well. So, and then we've got the starter set, which is coming out, which I believe, if memory serves me correctly, I think the starter set is going to carry an MSRP of $49.99. Just kind of a smaller box set. It's going to have a bunch of dice. Then we've got basically just an ad for Wrath and Glory. There's Torg Eternity. Which I think the setting is just so gonzo, it's pretty wild. And then, of course, Aventuria, The Dark Eye, and Fading Suns. Fading Suns is a future release that will probably end up going to Kickstarter in the future. So that is what we've got with the core rulebook for Wrath and Glory. As I mentioned before, it released at Gen Con. I don't know if it sold out. The last time I was over by the Ulysses booth was early morning on Sunday, and I know there wasn't a lot of stock left. So it should be out in PDF from Drive-Thru RPG, because Drive-Thru RPG usually gets the Ulisses North America releases. So I believe it should be out somewhere around about August 17th. I'm going to take a stab that you're looking at costs on the PDF is probably going to be about $29.99, $29.95, something like that. That's my guess on that. And then the actual physical hardcover should be in retail by October. That is kind of the soft target date that I have heard. But I have seen some distributors indicating that it's going to be available in stores on September 28th. So, I don't know. Who do you believe, the distributors or the company who's making the game? So, I have no clue. Now, of course, there is going to be a review for Wrath and Glory in the near future. RPGs do take a little bit of time for me to get reviews out, especially when we're looking at about 450 pages that I have to read through. So, but pretty excited. This looks very cool, and I am very glad that I have a review copy to take a peek at. All right, so that is it for the first look at Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory from Ulisses North America. So I want to let you know what's coming up on the rest of the week for episodes of The Daily Dope, as well as what's going to be on Monday's show. So Wednesdays is usually War Game Wednesdays, so I like to bust out, you know, the GMT titles, the Flying Pig game titles, the Tiny Battle Publishing titles. I'm going to do something a little different tomorrow. I am going to take a first look. I'm going to unbox Black Orchestra, which is from Starling Games, which I had not been overly aware of Starling Games until I went to Gen Con and had a really fun interview with their PR person, Brenna. And Black Orchestra is actually a game where the players cooperate together to kill Hitler. So it's all about the various different plots to kill the Fuhrer over the years. It's not just Operation Valkyrie. So taking a peek at the back here, let me kind of tilt that to get rid of some glare. So this looks pretty sweet, and it is designed by Philip Dewberry, and it has been, or Dewberry, I believe it's been out for a bit, but it's new to me. Well, okay, I've heard of it, but it's going to be new to me, so I'm going to be unboxing that tomorrow. Then on Thursday, which is when I normally take a look at RPGs, we're going to do a first look, just like I did with Wrath and Glory, for Overlight from Renegade Game Studios. This is really their first foray into role-playing games. Now, granted, Hunter's Books has partnered up with them to release Outbreak Undead 2nd edition, as well as Kids on Bikes, which I actually have copies of. But Overlight is Renegade's first role-playing game. So earlier in the show, We talked about their first foray into miniatures games. Overlight is out, and we will take a look at that on Thursday. On Friday, I will actually be reviewing Tiny Epic Galaxies from Gamelin Games. Michael Coe was kind enough to give me a review copy at Gen Con. Now, I had played this at Origins with Elliot Miller, but I had only played it once, and I don't review games based on a single playthrough. So Michael was kind enough to give me a review copy of Tiny Epic Galaxies. I will review this on Friday. I also have a copy of Tiny Epic Zombies, which I will be actually looking at next week. And then on Monday, a game that really is visually striking. And if you watch the Daily Dope, I talked about it when it was on Kickstarter. I talked about it when it was announced as a Gen Con release. I'm talking about Everdell. Now, this is a collector's edition, and you really can't see everything on it. So the collector's edition has got this sleeve on it that's showing off a lot of the artwork. But it is a tableau building game. It's like a worker placement game. It has this, like I said, it has this really striking table presence. And the word I have heard early on is it's not super difficult to learn to play, and that it is actually surprisingly deep as far as the strategy. So I will be unboxing this and taking a first look at Everdell on Monday. So I've got loads of stuff. And of course, I didn't post a picture like, hey, here's all the stuff I got from Gen Con, because I don't know. I kind of think that's a little rude these days. So especially with a lot of people kind of having a hard time staying in the hobby because of the rising prices for a lot of games and stuff. So anyway, so that is it. That's what's on the horizon. So that's it for the show today. So when you aren't watching videos, the Daily Dope or other Gaming Gang videos, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies. Come on, by now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. I will be back tomorrow. As I mentioned, I'm going to be unboxing and taking a look at Black Orchestra from Starling Games. So until then, have a great Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.